In this lesson, you'll learn how to write the subtopic sections for your informational article. You have two goals when you're writing these sections of your article. Number one, I need to see that you're really elaborating on your topic. You're teaching the reader about the topic and the science of the topic. I also need to see that you're using a variety of types of evidence to develop your idea. You need to use more than just testimony or textual evidence in developing the idea. So let's take a moment to look at the organization of these sections. Like with a body paragraph, these sections are going to start with your topic sentence. Within the first sentence or two, the reader needs to understand what you're arguing in these sections. The middle part is really going to be a blend of both elaboration and evidence. Elaboration is your explanation in your own words. This is where you're going to teach the reader about the science of the topic. You're going to explain what you learned in your research, those facts you gathered, and you're really going to help the reader understand your evidence. Your evidence is anything that helps you prove your topic sentence. So this might be examples, anecdotes, or those short stories, studies and statistics, and testimony, or the textual evidence that you gathered. These sections are going to be finished up with your concluding sentence, where you'll wrap up the idea and transition to the next topic. So let's look at my example. So I'm going to start with my topic sentence. There are a lot of things that can harm coral reefs, including sunscreen, agricultural runoff, and pollution. Nothing, however, is quite as devastating to coral reefs as warming water. So my argument is that warming water really is the most devastating to coral reefs. That's my argument in this section. So I'm going to start with some of my elaboration. This is my explanation in my own words. I'm really here going to explain the science of coral bleaching. Coral reefs are created by tiny organisms called polyps. When a polyp attaches itself to the rock of the seafloor, it divides into 1,000 little clones. Those clones connect to one another, over time creating the limestone skeleton of the coral reef. More elaboration. Although polyps are the backbone of the reef, zooxanthellae, photosynthetic algae that attach themselves to the polyps, is what gives the coral reefs its brilliant color. So here's my first piece of evidence. I'm going to use testimony here, my expert quote, to really help you understand how the photosynthetic algae work. Corals depend on zooxanthellae, argues Nick Graham, a marine ecologist at Lancaster University in England. The algae provide the corals with energy and nutrients. Without them, the corals would die. I want you to notice here that I have in parentheses after my piece of evidence, my piece of textual evidence, I have put in parentheses, I put the last name of the author of my source. If for some reason I didn't have an author for my source, I'm just going to put the source, whether that's the New York Times or the journal Nature, that will go in the parentheses. So now I'm going to come back to some elaboration. My explanation in my own words. When ocean waters warm, even by a few degrees, the coral polyps spit out the zooxanthellae. This causes the reef to lose its color, turning white. This is the first and most visible sign of coral bleaching. More elaboration. Although devastating for tourists to coral reefs, the loss of color is not why warming waters are coral reefs' enemy. When the coral polyps evict their colorful borders, the zooxanthellae, they are cutting themselves off from their primary food source. They're starving themselves. I want you to notice that I am still here really teaching you about the science. I'm really explaining what I learned in my research. Coral can bounce back from bleaching event. However, heat waves are becoming more and more frequent due to climate change, which doesn't allow them time to fully recover. Here's my second piece of evidence. Another example of testimony, an expert quote. Those that survive 1 year of bleaching, said Mark Aiken, coordinator of the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration's Coral Reef, are less likely to endure another event and are more vulnerable to disease like drought-weakened trees in the American Southeast that are now susceptible to bark beetle infestations. Again, notice that I put the last name of the author of my source in parentheses after that. Here's my second piece of evidence about how coral reefs can't bounce back. For example, when scientists surveyed the damage of the 2016 heat wave, they hit Australia's Great Barrier Reef. Australia's Great Barrier Reef. They found that over half of the reef had died due to either starvation or disease. Again, because it's evidence, I'm putting the last name of the author in parentheses afterwards. Okay, I'm going to finish it up with my concluding sentence. Few reefs will survive the ever-warming oceans caused by climate change. Those that do will suffer the impacts of ocean acidification, another byproduct of our increased carbon emissions. So I want you to notice here how I'm transitioning to my second subtopic, which is ocean acidification. So in your concluding sentence, I need to see that you are transitioning to that next subtopic. Okay, here's what I really want you to notice when you look at my subtopic section on coral bleaching. Most of this subtopic is really elaboration. It's my teaching, my explanation in my own words. Very little of it is actually evidence. However, the evidence that I include is both testimony and an example. So I'm using multiple types of evidence. Your job today and tomorrow is that you need to start to write your subtopic sections. And I really want for you to play with making sure that you are really explaining or teaching us everything that you learned about that subtopic. Really help us understand the science. And if that means you need to go do a little bit more research, that's fine. Okay, get started writing your subtopic sections.